You know, 2024 was a pretty good year for video games, at least it was for me. And not only did we get many breathtaking announcements for the later half of the year and going into 2025, not only did I get like 3 different fighting games to play and made my way onto an official article based on Marvel vs. Capcom 2, my favorite fighting game ever, not only was one of the greatest JRPG, not one of the greatest gaming experiences I've ever had my pleasure of playing come out and absolutely nail everything that I wanted out of it, but this year saw the return of a series that I thought we would never see the light of day ever again, because Visions of Mana was released in August, and it's the newest entry from the Mana series, which has been dormant for over 15 years, at least if we're talking in terms of new titles. I'll never forget watching that Game Awards where it was announced. It was a few of my pals, and we were all eating pizza and wings, constantly ragging on Jeff as we do every year, and hours before, my friend messaged me and he asked me, hey, what's a crazy announcement that could be at the Game Awards tonight? And I said, I don't know, like a new Mana game, and sure enough, it happened. Easily my highlight of the night. And it turns out we wouldn't have to wait too long, because at the end of August, like I said, this game would bless our gaming libraries. And honestly, things were looking up. Game review sites were giving their praises, and almost every trailer that I saw made me more and more excited to play it. It seemed like I was finally getting the Mana game that I so desperately wanted from a new age of consoles. And now, it was at my fingertips. And after putting my time into it, not only can I say I thought this game was everything I was hoping for, but dare I say, it might be the perfect Mana game for me in the entire franchise. And that may come as a shock to a lot of you if you know me pretty well, but hear me out, because I do genuinely think that this game makes up for the praise that I give it, and so do many others. So just sit down and let me take you through the journey that I had with this game, talking about everything that I loved, everything that I didn't like, everything in between, and present to you what I think is the grand return of the Mana series that I think many fans were hoping to finally arrive. And here we are. Let's just do it. I'm so excited to talk about this game. It was so good, guys. Let me fanboy, let me geek out. All right, I deserve this. So, as I mentioned, Visions of Mana is the newest entry in the Mana series, which hasn't seen a new game come out in over 15 years. But notice how I stress a new game hasn't come out in 15 years, because it doesn't mean that the series has been dormant as a whole. The Mana series did receive 2 brand new games in form of 2 remakes of both Secret and Trials of Mana, and we even got the Collection of Mana, which saw Final Fantasy Adventure, the SNES version of Secret of Mana, and for the very first time, the SNES versions of Trials of Mana officially localized here for North America. And while it was incredible to see all the Mana games coming out and back in some form of way or fashion, I'll be completely honest with you all, I didn't like the remakes all that much, and I haven't exactly been quiet about that either. And while that is a completely different topic for a completely different video, when these games were coming out, I still thought to myself that the remakes are nice, but I want a brand new Mana game, which now we have, and it's incredible that a series like this can still get some love even when you think it's never coming back. But of course, I can't make a video based on this game without talking about the big elephant in the room, which happened the same day that this game came out. While I'm sure many of you are aware of what happened, Oka Studio, the people behind Visions of Mana, basically had their entire team gutted from the inside, with only a few people still working there by the time the game was coming out. And while it was reported that the cuts started happening back in springtime, as I mentioned, they basically just left like the main people there, and they saw the launch of the game to make sure everything was fine, and then that was it, which was such a depressing thing to read online when that game came out. And while this kind of goes deeper into viewing how Tencent and NetEase's business ideals and practices are, I sadly would not be the best nor the most competent to explain or even talk about all of this in the detail needed. There are many articles out there, and I'm sure videos that will go over this, and any glimpse online will show you how angry the general audience was over this. Even people who didn't even want to play Visions of Mana, they were genuinely upset about it. And I think it's completely justified justified. The video game industry can be such a shitty environment to work in sometimes if you've ever listened to anyone talk more than 5 minutes about their work life, and I'm sure many people share those exact same thoughts. But to release people on the same day that their game comes out, especially one that was reviewing so positively, to me that is a brand new low that I can't even begin to imagine. And my heart goes out to everyone who worked on the project, and I hope they can bounce back from this somehow, because this is just not okay. And I am happy to see that some of them did go back and work at Square Enix, so I'm hoping that the rest of them found work too. I can only hope. Alright, now that the big problem is out of the way, let's talk about Vision Amana's narrative, because I do have a little bit to say about it. And don't worry, all the final story stuff will be excluded from the video. I'm not planning on spoiling anything here, so you can be safe about not getting too spoiled on the story here. But I will talk a little bit about the world to kind of set what kind of narrative this game does. So for most of the beginning of the game, it plays exactly how you think a generic JRPG would go through its plot, is what I would say if the game didn't surprise me with a very cool and unexpected opening sequence. Having this little opening portion is actually kind of a perfect tone setter for the game as a whole, and really shows you how destructive this world can be when the main story's initial objective is met. You see, in this world, there are those who are chosen to be an element's vessel, which are called alms. There is an alm for each element, and they are all from different parts of the world, at least typically. And their goal is to travel the world and meet other alms and travel to the mana tree, where they will give up their souls to the mana tree and to the goddess. This is a process that takes place every few years, and by what is told to us, has been going on for quite some time. However, it is not only the alms that are selected to go on this journey. Since the paths and destinations are dangerous and potentially life-threatening, there is someone who is appointed the role of a soul guard, which is a simple way to essentially saying they're a bodyguard for those who are selected as alms, and make sure that they reach their destination without any harm brought to them. And for those who choose not to accept their fate as alms and soul guards and attempt to run away, that is what the opening scenario is for. It's a sad and discouraging opening to those who try to object the roles they've been given, and the result of going against the current of the world. A constant theme found throughout the story is the idea of choice, and how once an alm is selected, they don't really have a right to say in the journey they must now embark on, which the game is never afraid of shining a light on. But for most of the cast, they still take that role very seriously, as not only is becoming an alm an important duty, but it's a sign of the hard work and dedication that they have given to their world that makes them deserve such a title. To a lot of people, even if you are destined to lose your soul at the end, becoming an alm is one of the highest achievements you can acquire, as it's basically the goddess and the elements themselves that acknowledge your hard work. Morley and Karina, two fantastic characters that you meet throughout the journey, are good examples of those, who take their roles very seriously and move forward, even if they know this is the end for them. And the other cast members, like Palomina and Julie, are those who take their roles for the purpose of making their homes and their country a lot better, and make sure that they can continue living and move to a brighter future. And of course, we have our main protagonists, Val and Hina, our token best friends since childhood, and now are both alm and soul guard intertwined. And while their journey starts as a happy-go-lucky road trip around the world, you can slowly see reality start to fade in as they realize that much of the fun and excitement that they're having, soon it will all be over. And there are plenty of moments where the brave faces are warned to set aside any worries or constant denial of what the future will hold. And I think that's what makes Vision Amana's story so much fun and intriguing to go through. Yeah, it's as generic as a mana game could be in many times throughout its narrative, but when the game wants to start to move away from those norms, we can see that the story has its very serious moments, and once you reach the end of one of the early chapters, you get a real feel for what the tone is going for. And I think it works super well. The mana games have never been shy to do more serious and use darker elements in their stories, and I'm glad that the newest entry wasn't afraid to do them either. I'm leaving a lot out here, but I truly think that Vision Amana's story is one that you should experience on your own, and hopefully the little bits of crumbs that I've left for you are at least intriguing enough for you to check out, because I honestly think that this is a story that you should really go through without knowing anything that happens in it. I promise you, it's a fucking roller coaster when it wants to be. And that is all reflected in its world and its environment and its population as well. Like, there's so many little things in this game that just ooze life out of this goddamn planet that we're on. It's just nice to see the Mana series fully envelop its world and its identity, and it's just man, I love every minute of it. Seriously, just take my word for it. The narrative is really, really good and really fun when it wants to be, and it's very sad and very cool. Just trust me, alright? Trust me, it's good. Alright, so I don't think it'll take too much evidence for me to say that this game is just so goddamn gorgeous. Like, I'll be honest, this might be one of the prettiest games that Square Enix has ever slapped their names on. There were so many moments and areas where I would just be running around and just at awe at everything that I was seeing and how pretty it looked. Taking breaks every now and then to really absorb the scenery the game was painting across my screen. Oh my god, it looks so good. Even when you're in a darker area, the environment still makes its presence known, and that effort is what makes these areas so much fun to run around in. Now, I got nothing against the games that use a more gritty tone or graphical style, but when the market is flooded with these games, having a game like Visions of Mana come out and look this gorgeous just gives me all the dopamine I could ever ask for. And I could say that of the character design as well. While a lot of the NPCs are your generic looking townsfolks and royal knights and all that good fantasy anime inspired background objects, I don't think I could say the same for our main cast, as our loyal soul guard and alms stand out from each other while of course still taking all those tropes that we know and love. Val keeps the traditional look of our main character, having many elements of characters from past games, which I think is a cute way to celebrate the series' history. And I love the way that the alms are designed as well. Not only do each of them reflect the part of the world that they hail from, but they also make sure to make them stand out from each other as well. My two personal favorites have to be Palomina and Joulet, but I honestly really love everyone's design. And all of these beautiful settings and characters and action moments are accompanied by what I consider to be one of the Mana series' best soundtracks of all time. Hiroki Kikuta, Toyoshi Sekito, and Ryo Yamazaki really nailed everything there is to love about the older Mana game soundtracks. Everything from the quiet, calming tracks when exploring forests or caves, to the wide open, uplifting tunes when exploring the larger areas of the game, to of course having some of the coolest boss tracks that I think the series has ever had, and really reflected all the good music from back in the day too. Playing this game just made that little kid inside of me that was playing Secret of Mana for the first time just jump out in joy, which I truly haven't felt in a long time with the series, and I think that's the goal that they wanted to make for everyone who plays Visions of Mana. But of course, this is a video game that you have to play with a controller, or a keyboard if you're a sicko, I guess, and it is with a huge amount of joy that I get to say that Visions of Mana plays very well. Now, to be real for just one moment, this is actually one of the first games I've been able to speak about since I've upgraded my PC, and since I've gotten a good old graphics card update to a 4060, it means that a lot of games I'll be talking about in the near future are mainly going to be played on PC, and they're going to look, hopefully, very good. And I am very happy that this is one of the few Square Enix branded titles that doesn't run like complete shit on PC. Now, this isn't to say that there weren't a few hitches here and there on my playthrough, but for like 99% of the time, this game ran as smooth as butter on my good old 460. You'll have to let me know how it runs on consoles though. I'm hoping that it was just as good as an experience that I had, but I wouldn't know because I didn't have to play this game on console. Now let's talk about the good stuff, the gameplay. So I'm sure you picked up that this game is an action RPG in which you'll be able to control a party of 3 and battle large groups of enemies and gigantic boss battles. When in battle and even outside of battle, you can freely switch between your party members, and luckily each of your members play very differently from one another, giving the player a ton of options to choose from and hopefully find something that they vibe with in terms of party dynamics, and this is done via changing classes. As I mentioned before, each alm is associated with a different element, and during your playthrough you'll acquire different classes based on these elements which you get, which will allow each character to have 3 different weapon types across the different elements, which is honestly kinda smart, and I'm glad that they didn't put a different weapon on every element, since there is a very good chance that one of the weapons you like using with a character may not be working so well against a boss that you're fighting because they'll be of the other element that you are weak against. So this way you'll be able to still keep the same weapon you like and switch to a different element that wouldn't be affected by them. And even if that could happen, there is a good chance that another character won't have this issue. Now, I'll be honest in saying that I wish we could just equip whatever weapon we wanted, like in a game like Secret of Mana, but I'm willing to accept the fact that they are tied to the elemental classes of the game, but I'm also going to bring this back up a little bit later, just hang in there. It doesn't really take too much away from the experience in my opinion, and since we are on the topic of them, one of my favorite additions to Visions of Mana are the class-specific weapon items. Now, I'll fully admit that I did not use all of them to their fullest potential, and by the end I only had like 3 that I was really comfortable using in battle, but each new element will bring along an item which will help you navigate the open areas, but also help you in the heat of battle. These can range from a Twilight Princess-esque boomerang that launches enemies into the air, a water cannon with the force of 1,000 waves, and a straight-up time stoppage, baby. And I feel that they all represent the element that they are attached to really well. It's one of those things that you don't really think will be a huge help in battle, but then you notice your AI partner is spamming the fire weapon because the cooldown keeps resetting, and oh, would you look at that, the battle is over. Funny how that works. But this talk of battles brings me to two things that I actually didn't really enjoy on my playthrough. Those two things were the difficulty settings and the lack of blocking. First, let me talk about the difficulty for a second. Now, I'm not saying that Visions of Mana is a hard game. In fact, I'm willing to bet that a lot of people played this on normal mode or even easy mode, and that is completely fine, and I bet you had a great time. Because some fights were a bit trickier than others, but you managed to make your way through, even on some of the tougher boss fights in the game. But when it comes to action RPGs, I tend to play on the harder side of the difficulties, as it's usually my personal preference. If, for instance, when the new East game comes out, which don't worry, I do plan on talking about a little bit down the line, I tend to at least play the game on hard or above. Now, this is due to the fact that I am very familiar with the series, but a lot of it carries over in games in its genre. Visions of Mana on hard, however, I'm not gonna say it's the best, as this game's version of hard mode is you're just gonna die in 2 or 3 hits and whoops, I'm in danger. Now, this isn't really a difficulty module that I'm totally against. As mentioned before, I'm a huge fan of the East series, and really all they do to make their games harder is make you die a lot faster. But unlike the modern East games, Visions of Mana's defenses options are, I hope you dodge out of the way in time. And this kind of brings me to my next point, the other thing that I mentioned. I really don't understand why this game doesn't have a guard function, or at the very least a block mechanic. Yes, there are spells and stat boosts and rewards that help you taking less damage, and there are classes that do supply you with a shield, but blocking shouldn't be relegated to a class. Honestly, again, I think I wouldn't mind this if the weapons weren't tied to the elements, but they are. And in a game with some of the hardest bosses can just 2 or 3 shot you, I just wish there was a way that a character could block an incoming attack, or better yet, have like a riposte or a parry system like every fucking game has nowadays. And yes, there is technically a way to equip all of your weapons on the base class, but that's not something you're doing until post-game, at least from what I understood and read online. And don't get me wrong, it's entirely possible that I missed out on some stuff or some gameplay mechanics that would have made my life a little bit easier, but still, this game should have had a guard button. Like, it's weird that it didn't have one. I don't know, it kind of irked me. But it's not something that I would completely say is a huge negative to the game's gameplay mechanics. Yeah, it's annoying, but really, I only really found it annoying because I was playing on hard. For those of you playing on a normal difficulty or even easy, the gameplay systems are all there, and they will allow you to use all the funny, wacky setups at your disposal without really anything getting in your way. You'll have a blast. Oh, wait, man, did I even mention that there's magic in this game? Because, yeah, there is, and it's pretty damn funny. Also, actually, one more game mechanic that I didn't really touch on are ability seeds, which is actually something I really enjoy about Visions of Mana. Each seed has a unique ability that you can equip and swap anytime you have access to the menu, which is great. I do think that it takes a little bit long to unlock a good amount of slots for each character, but I mean, hey, there's only so much you can do in a 35-hour RPG. I'll cut them some slack for wanting to space it out a little bit. And, well, okay, I guess last but not least, I should talk about the bosses in the game because, yeah, they're pretty much a highlight for a lot of people, and it's not hard to see why. A lot of the boss fights in this game are fights that make you think about what classes to bring and what magics to equip that's best suited for what you're going to be handling. And since this is a large celebration title for the Mana series, you can expect some legacy bosses to show up from time to time, and it's always a treat to see them come back. Yeah, outside of the vampires, seriously, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with that fight, but he should have stayed where he belonged, because the amount of suffering that stupid creature brought to me is like way too much for me to put into words on a page. But nonetheless, I think there is a good variety here. I don't have time to go through all of them, so if you want, check out this video that I found from Dadel, I think I'm pronouncing that right, where he ranks every boss in the game. I pretty much agree with most of his placements, and it's a good watch. I'll leave it in the description below. Visions of Mana is a game that feels like it was made specifically for me in some areas, and it felt like it came out at the right time to satisfy all the things that I needed in a new Square Enix branded title. And while I am the outlier and really loved my time with Final Fantasy XVI and absolutely demolished Rebirth when it came out in the same year as Mana, having a more bright and colorful action RPG was just what I needed. It was nice to see a game remember that you shouldn't be shy to use all the bright colors that you can muster, and have a cast that's both wacky but heartfelt. The best way I could describe Visions of Mana is that it's a comfy game for me. It brings me back to the days of coming home from school and popping in that wonderful little RPG on my PlayStation 1 or 2 or Super Nintendo or whatever, and getting lost in its world while also speeding around on the battlefield doing cool as shit anime moves. And yeah, at times it's not the best, but honestly, I don't think those moments ever ruin the whole experience. Look, I'll be real, with this channel, I tend to always focus on the more positive side of things. Rarely do I ever talk about games that I don't enjoy, and very rarely do I ever nitpick about things to a point where I would consider it bothersome. I talk about games that I like a lot. Sometimes my words get that across, and sometimes I just sound like a weirdo, but it's all from my love of video games, and especially the JRPG genre. And I'm lucky that a game like Visions of Mana exists, because this game was basically a me game. It hit all the right notes for me, and it's one that, even though I beat it months ago, still lingers on a little bit in my brain. If you haven't checked out Visions of Mana yet, I highly recommend that you do. It constantly goes on sale for less than $50 like Canadian, and sometimes it's even cheaper than that. And for a game that has about 25 to 30 hours of playtime for its main story, and a bunch of post-game content and a bunch of side content too, as well as a new game plus, I can honestly say that it's worth every penny. Visions of Mana reminded me that JRPGs can still be fun and whimsical adventures, and I hope that the words I've been saying for the last 20 minutes gave you some encouragement to give it a shot. And hey, I mean, there's even a free demo for you to try out as well before you sink any money into it. There's nothing to lose. I know I used the title of something like "This game deserved better," and I don't mean that from a critiquing point of view. And most outlets or YouTubers that I saw talk about this game were nothing short of positive and really showed that they loved that the Mana series was returning in such a grand way. But it's sad to see that the team couldn't celebrate that alongside us. And although I really appreciate the social media accounts and Square Enix themselves really trying to push for the game, I don't know if we'll ever actually get another one like this, but there's a part of me that chooses to hope, because Visions of Mana exists, and I hope that can happen for other games too. And at the very least, I'm glad that the Mana series got to have at least one giant triumphant return, because this is what every game deserves. I love Visions of Mana, and it's a game that I'll probably return to every now and again. And the only thing I'll say at the end of this video is thank you all to put their hard work into making this title. At the very least, you made me a kid again, and you kept a smile on my face the entire journey. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a comment down below. Tell me if you liked Visions of Mana. Remember to do all that subscribing stuff too. I hate to throw it in the video, but you know I got it. And hey, I'm glad to be back, and hopefully I'll be back sooner rather than later. I'll catch you all in the next one. See ya.